Okay, so this year I've had a massive focus and shift on understanding different modalities around fitness and health. And one thing that I actually haven't tried before is strength training. That's why I'm here today with Joel. So Joel, introduce yourself, man.
I'm Joel. I'm the owner of Small Goods Gym. I've been doing this for a long time now, really. But I've been doing this for myself and for the people of Small Goods for about 2.5 years. We specialize in mostly powerlifting and weightlifting, but if you look at the way that we do what we do, and we have quite a broad list of people that we help, it comes down to allowing people to be more of who they are through strength training and associated modalities.
It's cool, man. It's funny because we actually met years ago at another gym, and now you finally own your own gym, so congratulations with that, man.
Oh, and I mean, same goes for you. It's only been fun watching you go from strength to strength with what you do as well.
Appreciate it, brother. Cool, so today is the first stage in my new fitness journey. So tell me and explain to me, how do we start?
So when you come to Small Goods, the first thing we do is we look at the assessment process. I think that there are two sides to this. I need to know who you are as a person, and I need to know physically what you're capable of and where your strengths and weaknesses lie. So, you know, the first part's going to be sitting on the couch. There's nothing untoward about that, I promise. But we sit down and I'll ask you a few questions, you know. Where do you feel strong? Where do you feel weak? What kind of sports or bits and pieces have you done in the past? What's your history look like? Do you have any injuries? And like, what's the future look like? And why aren't we there already?
Sounds good. So for me, I've actually stopped playing competitive football. So last year was my last season, and now I'm shifting more into running, boxing, and wanting to understand a bit more of strength training.
No, that's awesome, and I think it's great. When you say you're giving up competitive football, what is it that you think you're leaving behind, and where are we going to go next? Like, with all this time, effort, and energy, who do you want to be, let's say, a year or two from now? What do you want to be able to say about yourself physically as a result of your training?
I don't want to say like, the best version of myself, because that sounds very cliche, but at the same time, me and my wife are planning to have kids in the next few years. So ideally, I'd love to be ready mentally, physically, and also like spiritually within myself to be ready to be the best father that I can be for our first child.
No, that's great, and I think it's super important. I think a lot of gyms, especially strength training gyms, lean only into physical strength, what's the weight in the bar. But if you look at Small Goods and the way that we look at things, we have health, strength, and longevity as our three pillars, and we basically try to bleed them into one another and say, well, what's going to work here? I think when you only focus on strength, it becomes quite a short-term endeavor, and strength is something we want for our entire life. You can see that with some of my older clients, you know, like Paul, 72, world champion. I think that that's strength, because strength endures and something strong doesn't break. But I think that a lot of people are very closed-minded in what that approach looks like. And I think that if you're healthy, you have the ability to be stronger. If you're stronger, you can live better and longer. And if you live longer, then you'll be able to live a healthy life in the way that you want to live. So it's really cool that you're thinking about these things ahead of time. What kind of challenges do you feel you face? Like, what about becoming a father do you not feel ready for? And I mean, you can never be fully ready, right? But like, how can strength help you in that kind of vision or that interest, do you think?
I think number one, which comes to my mind, is energetically. So being able to handle my own business, also alongside being able to have the energy to spend time with my kids, my wife, and actually like play around with them, and be a present father. I think that's one thing that like comes to my mind when you say these things. And also I suffer from an immune disorder, which is ulcerative colitis and Crohn's.
Yeah.
So I've got to be aware that and be able to manage these things before I get a flare-up.
No, that totally makes sense. And I think one of the things you most commonly hear me say to people at Small Goods is that strong people make strong decisions. And strong decisions don't always mean loading up a bar and throwing the most weight around. I think that with someone like yourself, and I have quite a lot of people come to me with symptoms of chronic fatigue or chronic pain, and I've actually become someone that's etched my name as someone who deals with these things quite a lot. And what I remind people is that at the end of the day, when you're training physically, you have volume, you have intensity, and you have frequency, and these things can be altered to create a different dosage. Now you think about how we would take a Panadol when we have a headache. If you take 1, you're probably going to feel a little bit better. You take 10, you might end up in the hospital. But I think when you look at a lot of the fitness industry these days, the dosage is 0 or 10, and the result is overdose or nothing at all. And I think this is why you see so many people yo-yo between doing a lot and not doing much, and in the long term actually getting no real effect. And going back to longevity, we should be getting stronger in the long term. So if the net zero effect exists here, then what we're doing as practitioners is not really helpful to people. And I'm really looking forward to showing you what I think a process that structures strength and longevity and health to get you the best result can look like.
Awesome, really excited, man.
Yeah, same
Good
goes.
stuff, brother.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right, so for the assessment, the way I like to deal with this is that I'm always going to have a rough picture just by the way a person walks in the door of how capable or maybe not they are in terms of general movement capacity. Now, Bernie's a fit young gentleman, pretty capable. I would normally, for people that are a little bit less capable than this, do some easier things, but I don't think we're going to have too many issues today. So what we're going to start with first is the 45-degree back extension. Now this one here, it's probably the easiest way to create a raw hinge, and a lot of people either flex through their back or flex through their hips as one of their two priorities when it comes to a hinge pattern. Neither of these are inherently better or worse, but I will see what Bernie's main strategy is, and that's something that I can determine needs work or does not, and then I can program accordingly. So when it comes to doing the raw hinge on this one here, the way I like to see this done is you're trying to create as much hip flexion as possible. Ideally, you're going to think about crunching your belly and your thighs together, and if you do that, what you're going to notice is that the lower back stays quite stiff. You're looking to try and get as much range out of the bottom of that as possible, and quite a lot of the time what I'll see is people struggle to have the strength to do that, so instead they'll solve the problem like so. Let's find out what Bernie's strategy is.
Let's start. Okay, so straight legs, right?
Just show me how you would hinge. That's all there is to it. 8 reps, please.
8 reps.
That's it. As much range as you can get out of it as well.
Definitely feeling in the hamstrings.
Good. 2 more there. And last one. Cool, and rest. So I didn't mind that. Once again, it's about seeing the strategy. I think a lot of coaches will instantly label something good or bad. At the end of the day, you've got a problem to solve and a strategy to get there. What I would say is that there was probably more range needed in the bottom of that, and I'm not surprised because if you're playing soccer, a lot of your time spent up tall. We're not bent over very often at all. If you don't spend time there, then we're not going to see a strategy that relies on that, normally speaking. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense, yeah.
Great, so that's our hinge assessment. We move on to the next.
Cool.
So the next assessment we have is for the squat. Now in the lower body, there are 2 main primary movement patterns. It's going to be the hinge and the squat and variations thereof. We've just had a look at the hinge. The next is going to be our squat pattern. Now, Bernie is someone who has a background of playing a lot of soccer and not doing a lot of long range movement. So I'm going to start with a more rudimentary version of the squat today. We're just going to squat to that bench with our hands out in front, try and tap and go. We're going to do 5 reps to the bench first.
So hands out?
Yep. Awesome. Now you're going to take a step forward and squat as deeply as you can without the bench there.
5 times?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So what I'm seeing here is really, really simple stuff, and you often see this with people that don't spend a lot of time squatting under load. Bernie's main strategy is good. He doesn't struggle for squat depth, but if we have a look closely at both the bench and the freestanding, his balance or his ability to maintain a center of balance is something that could improve. And the way I can tell that is because as he squats, his toes come up off the floor. It's a sign he's putting a lot of weight in his heels, and he doesn't want the main strategy to be keeping the weight over the foot and to use the legs to push. So once again, you've got someone who's quite reactive, quite bouncy, but maybe not someone who's got the most mass through their quads and wants to use that mass effectively. So we're now going to move into a weighted version of the same thing and see how he produces force under load.
Let's do it.
So this is our newest torture device at Small Goods. I didn't think I was ever going to find it because it's quite an old machine, but I got really lucky and we found one just when I needed it. Simple with this one here, we're going to add some load to the squat pattern and see how Bernie likes to solve the problem under load, not just in free. With this one here, can I get your shoulders on this?
Yep.
But I don't want you pushing up into the pads.
Okay. So like that?
Yep, perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpin this in a second. Yep. You're going to get a little bit of weight. You're going to squat as deep as you possibly can, and then we're going to pin that in, and you'll be loaded from that point onwards.
Cool.
Pulling out, let that sink. Sit as deep as you possibly can. Tell me when.
Yep.
Cool. And then from there, we're going to try and stand up under load. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. I definitely feel an imbalance in the left and right quad. The left's
That's totally fine. We can talk about that in a second as to why. So get to the bottom position, hold that, unload it if you can, a little bit lower.
Yep.
I want you to sink one deeper now.
Oh.
Keep going, keep going, keep going. Now give that a crack.
Jesus.
One more, all the way down. Get those plates clinking. And drop to the bottom and rest.
Wow.
Where'd you feel that one, boss?
Quads.
Amazing. Now, a lot of people give machines a bad rap. They say, why do this if I can do free weights? Now, I used to be that person, ironically, but what I've realized is that machines create a lot of constraints to force a job to be done well. Now, we identified that you don't like keeping your weight forward over your feet, and you'd rather not use the quads. I can try till the cows come home to make you do that in a weighted sense with a barbell, but I bet squatting's never quite felt natural to you, is that right?
Yeah.
And that's normally because the weight's going to be backward and we don't have the quad mass to really do a good job immediately. Now there are still solutions to that, and we can work with the barbell, which we'll do later on. But starting here is a really nice place because you have constraints and they force you to do a good job. We noticed that Bernie wasn't particularly mobile. We gave him a few reps to do the job, and lo and behold, there's more mobility than you think once you give yourself a bit of warning. That's the squat assessment. There's not too much to say there, but one thing you will note if you watch in detail here is once again, when he hits the bottom position, the knees shift back, the weight ends up in the heels, and we're trying to use the hips rather than the quads to do the job. Not a problem, just the way the problem is being solved right now. That's squatting.
I love how you break it down, so good.
Alrighty, and the last common upper body assessment, we're going to work through the lock 3. I really like this as a means to see how internal and external rotation looks like at the shoulder, and we also get to see how the scapula moves. So in a second, Bernie's going to lie face down. We're going to start in a T shape, trying to lift the dumbbells as far off the floor as we can. Then we're going to go down to the side, palms down, do the same thing, working on the external rotation, and then we're going to do the same, palms facing up for the internal rotation at the shoulder joint. We're going to learn a lot about that shoulder injury. I look forward to seeing it, Mr. Bernie. Off you hop.
Let's do it.
We're looking for 5 each here.
Okay, so what was the first position again?
You're in a T, arms out long.
Okay. Like here?
Yep, your chin's going to stay on the floor.
Yep.
And I'm really focused on this area here. We're looking for 5 reps when you can.
Oh, it's tough.
Good. Now down by your sides, palms still facing down.
Yep.
All the way, all the way. There you go. Same again. Good. And flip the palms for me so they face the ceiling. And same again, another 5.
Wow. This is hard. It's like cramping.
And rest. Nice. So that's the lock 3. Not mine, Dr. Andrew Locke's. But I really like this one because you'll see what people's range and strength is in a lot of different angles at the shoulder very quickly. And you can see where people struggle. So I thought that the weakest of the 3 was up here.
Yep.
And I'm not surprised, given the dislocated shoulder, that some of the scapular strength we could be working on already. I think with the internal, external rotation, a lot nicer. But with the internal rotation, you got a lot more height than the external. And once again, that's quite common for people. A lot of people spend a lot more time internally rotated these days. So that's what you tend to see. But looking forward to working on this a little bit further.
Beautiful.
Alrighty, so next up we have the safety bar. Now, we did our ground level assessments. I've looked at Bernie and I've thought the hinge, the squat, and the upper body mechanics look okay. I don't really have any issues that are so glaring that I wouldn't go beyond this level. From here we start to move into our powerlifting basics. We've established that a ground up base exists, and now we're going to start working in environments that are a little bit more specific to what we do every day at Small Goods. This is a safety bar, if you haven't seen it before. Now the thing I really like about the safety bar is you've got this really big meaty surface at the top and you don't get a lot of tension with your arms. The thing that's nice about this is you have a really big contact point at the upper back and you can feel the weight and how it connects to you as one object. This will allow for you to end up feeling really easily balanced as you hit the bottom position, rather than the bar that ends up getting in the way with the way that your arms interact with it. So we're going to give a few reps of the safety bar squat a go. This one's our heavier one, so take care. We're going to start with 3 reps, nice and slow.
I've actually never used this before, so.
Perfect. That's it. Relax your entire upper body.
Yep.
Take your feet back a little bit closer to the box. And all you're going to do is just let yourself sink into the middle of your foot. And back up. Notice the toes are peeling again. Funny that.
Yeah.
Okay, we keep the weight forward. Oh, look at that, magic.
Ah, it feels different now.
Yeah, I bet a lot more legs, right?
Yeah.
Good, and rack that up for me.
Wow, that was awesome.
So what you can see is that in the initial assessment from the ground up, I determined that we're not going to want to keep our weight forward, and this is the thing that we see in practice in the gym. And I think that this is why ground up assessment's a really important element of what we do here. If you don't start from the start, then when you end up in potentially riskier environments, not necessarily, but potentially, if we don't know what our strategy is and we don't know how to change our strategy, then we end up being inefficient in how we work.
Got it.
That's the safety bar.
Nice. So I've never seen or ever tried something with this piece of machinery before.
Yeah, this is a combo rack. It's a competition piece of powerlifting equipment. So you're only likely to see this in specialty gyms. And the reason is because they cost $3.5 grand despite being this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Insane.
They are a squat rack when you pull the bench out. They're a bench when you've got the bench in. And they're used in competition so that we have standardized equipment to work with. And they're really handy, but very expensive, so no one wants to buy them.
Jeez.
Alrighty, next up we have the bench press. No surprises, we're moving through the squat, bench and deadlift now. We're in powerlifting mode. Now the bench I like to think is having 2 main points of concern, and it's much like the squat. If you consider the squat's 2 main points of concern, the connection of the bar on your back and you being middled with your feet on the floor is the other point of contact, and all of those staying stacked. With the bench, the same things tend to apply. If I'm here, the 2 main points I want to really consider to begin with are going to be my upper back, where my neck and back meet the bench, and my feet on the floor. If I push through my feet, I create stability through the lower body. If this is really heavily planted into the bench, it's also a nice stable object. From here, I then want to make sure that my connection to the bar is stable. A nice easy way to tell is to cup your hands, and if it rolls, you're not in the right spot. And from here, I'm going to keep all that the same as I press. As you get comfortable, you can continue to grip as you will. But you have 3 nice, strong points of contact. Feet keep the legs stable, shoulders down to keep the upper body stable, and a well-balanced hold of the bar so that you and the bar meet well as well.
It's really interesting because I've never benched like that before. I've always had my back flat.
Oh my God, am I going to break my back? Surprise, I do 170 kilos this way, you'll be fine. That's it. So first one we're going to focus on is getting that neck and upper back planted as much as we can into that bench.
Yep.
You're going to push the feet lightly away from you and down into the ground, reaching the ribs up, cup the hands.
Where did the hands placement go? Is it just...
I like having the pinky where the ring is, just
Yep.
as a place to start for many people.
Cool.
Start with an open hand so you can feel the bar in the hand properly. Good, and back in. Lovely, up we come. So this is the bench press. What people don't realize is amongst the power lifts, this is by far the most technical. The reason is because there are lots of things we don't want moving and we have to create the ability for them to not move. And then there are other things that are moving and we want them to move without the other stuff not moving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you felt that, but one thing I would say is that didn't look
It wasn't
or
stable.
feel particularly stable.
Not at all.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to play with this. One thing that is a bit frustrating about bench compared to squatting or deadlifting is that there's a lot more individuality between lifters, and a lot of this has to be played with and experimented roughly, so to speak. So we're going to jump back down on the bench. I'll get you to do the exact same thing you just did. We're going to play with a few things here. First one we're going to play with is the point of contact at the neck and the chest. I want you to try and bring the rib cage up into your chin as much as you can. Think about creating 3 or 4 chins and pushing that down into the bench. There's a lot more tension there. Now we're going to take the feet much more narrower. Keep going, keep going, keep going. You're also going to take your feet further away. Keep going. Now, one risk is that these feet are going to want to slip. So you're going to push really hard into the inside edge, and that's going to stop the feet from planting because there's more surface area on the floor now. You're going to feel a lot more stable in that position. We're going to unrack again, and we're going to keep pushing through the legs and that triple chin, and you'll feel a lot more stable compared to the set before.
I feel it now. It's starting to connect.
Good. And bring it in. Cool. So the biggest issue that I diagnosed there with Bernie is that his feet were too close to the bench. At the end of the day, if this isn't reaching up, then we have to travel a further distance with the bar. And we also don't have something that's in a set position. If the feet are further away, I can push them in that direction to take everything up into the bar's direction, and that's where the stability came from there. So that's the bench press.
Beautiful. Oh, that clamp is insane.
Yeah. Nothing's going anywhere with this on. Yeah, in today's edition of shit that shouldn't cost as much as it does, these clamps cost about $400 new.
No way.
Yeah.
What do you call that?
Deadlift jack.
Jack. Okay, deadlift jack.
Yep. Let's see how this guy wants to play today. Great. Alrighty, and now we have deadlifts. Now, in Bernie's scenario, he's told me he's deadlifted before. I have no problems normally putting people on a bar, but for the sake of conciseness, I'm going to show you my rough technique, and I'll explain why I like to start here. This is not the end point for many of our lifters. However, it does cover bases many people tend to miss. Now, going back to our central concepts, I said points of contact and balance are very high priority. I'm going to put half of my foot under the bar. That's going to be a point of balance for me when I deadlift. Now, from here, I'm going to bend my knees until the shins touch the bar. This is going to allow me to keep some leverage in the legs, and this is where a lot of people go wrong deadlifting. From here, a lot of people are told a lot of things. If you've watched many strength coaches, they'll talk about clamping down, pulling back. You have all of these variations. But at the end of the day, if the spine stays the exact same way throughout the lift and nothing particularly changes, you're not actually exposing the spine to an awful lot of force itself. You're exposing the muscles around it to force. So when I'm here, I keep my legs bent. I let my upper body stay exactly the same. I reach down as feels good on some long arms, and I stand up and push. Come back down. And that's that. So we're over the midfoot. We bend the knees until the shins touch the bar. The upper body stays as it is. I reach down and I stand up. Cool. Show me.
Let's do it.
Lovely, nice and middled, good legs. Nice. Same tendencies, toes peeling up, we've seen this before. One more. And rest. And that's the deadlift.
Wow. That's a really cool setup where you say halfway over your feet. And
Have your deadlifts ever felt like that before?
No.
You feel a lot more in the legs when you do it that way, right?
Definitely.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Fun question for you. What's the most you've ever deadlifted?
My entire life?
Yeah.
120, 130, around that.
Okay.
This was a while ago.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We could do that today. I'm not going to force you to do that though. Alrighty, so we've looked at Bernie, we've done our base up assessment, we've now looked at the powerlifting basics. We're noticing the same things when it comes to squatting and squatting related patterns, always shifting back, which is fine. Now we're going to do a quick assessment for Olympic lifting because I think Bernie's in a situation where he could quite enjoy this and probably is physically capable. This is probably the higher end of what we would do in an assessment at small goods, but For select people in athletic situations like Bernie's, quite often we see that because of the athletic nature of the movements, they go quite well. So before we get started, we're going to do 3 things. They're very simple, easy movements. First one's going to be hitting the deepest squat you can and just bouncing. If it stays feet flat and you don't want to leave the floor, that's fine. If you feel okay, we're going to jump and land. We're looking for 5 of those when you're ready.
So just bouncing here?
Yep. If you feel like you can give it a bit more height, give it a bit more height. Great. And rest. Lovely. We're going to do the same with a shallow variation now. Because Bernie is obviously quite capable in this arena, rather than going straight to some of the easier stuff, we'll do something a little bit more difficult. We're going to do what's called a staggered pogo. I've got 1 foot that's light, 1 foot that's heavy. I'm trying to find a bit of height in these.
Huh. So 1 light and 1 heavy.
Yep, and you're really trying to find height and be on the ground as short an amount of time as you can. And switch sides. Good, and rest. So these are our plyometrics. This is what will determine that you're able to deal with some load and rebound out of these positions. It's no surprise to me with the athletic background that both of these look quite good. The last one we're going to play with is an overhead squat. This one's going to be quite different to what you're used to. We're going to put this bar up behind us. We're going to take a squat stance we feel comfortable with, and we're going to descend over the middle of the foot as deep as we can and stand back up. Again, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to sink and relax and then stand up.
Let's test out my shoulders.
Let's see. Take a much wider grip.
About here?
I like index to the wider of the 2 rings.
Wider.
Perfect.
So just pop it up?
Yep, put it up overhead, however. He's already struggling.
Yeah.
Take your time. You get to where you get to and come back up. Great, do the same, but pull the bar further behind you. Roll the wrists back. Try 1 more and relax. Already better.
Wow.
1 more. And rest. Great. So we put that bar down. That's going to be probably the most demanding thing Bernie does all day.
Definitely. But
I have an assessment of a few things now. Can you bounce? Can you land? Can you do this under some load? And what does your overhead range look like? I'm not surprised. I've had the conversation with Bernie. I've already done a couple of assessments, and we know that the shoulders have dislocated in the past. So one thing I'm going to be careful with today is making sure that I don't put him in too many positions that are too demanding. However, if we never push anything, we never get better. So we're going to balance this out. If you jump off the platform, I'll show you what we're going to do now. We're going to work with a hip power snatch. Now this is going to be really helpful because this is where most of our power is going to be created in the snatch. It's going to test the overhead range, but it's not going to be as demanding for someone like Bernie, who we just saw struggled a little bit with some of the deeper range work we did. I'm here. I'm going to put myself in the stance I feel like I could jump the highest, and I'm going to star jump. Oh shit, there's a bar in my hands, I forgot. Again, where could I jump? Star jump. Not so hard actually. Your turn.
Wow.
3 reps, please.
There's like already like voices and fear already around this, but let's do it, man.
Great. Wow, not so scary.
Not
we
so
do
scary
2
at
more. Trust the jump. Oh, sharp. 1 more. Get that bar back.
Yep.
Nice and steady when you land. And that's a snatch. Not so bad, actually, ladies and gentlemen.
Cool.
Good. So that's the snatch. We could work on this, and there's a lot of refinement needed because these are the most precise movements I've ever dealt with as a coach of any sport. And we're going to move on to the clean and jerk now. The same fundamental principles always apply with weightlifting. I need to find a place I can jump and jump strong. I need to trust the jump, and the arms need to be loose and allow the jump to transfer into the bar. So I'm here. I've now got my clean and jerk. I'm going to find my jump stance, going to relax my arms, pull and catch. Again. And when I do the jerk, same thing here. Arms are relaxed. I rest this on my torso. I'm going to find my jump position, and I'm going to throw and catch. Now, a lot of people are worried about the shoulders in weightlifting. When you notice that it's predominantly a jump pattern that's reinforced, it's the legs that do the work, and that makes life a lot easier.
Right.
Let's see how we go. Narrower grip on this, where you would deadlift normally.
Oh yeah, narrow.
Even narrower. Great.
So
Find your jump stance. Shoulders a bit further over the bar. There you go. Jump and catch. Nice.
Wow.
Again, back down. Relax the arms. Let them chill. Ah, so much smoother. One more of those. Good. Now we're going to do the overheads. Put it back to the chest.
sorry, 1 second.
You're all good.
The glass is slipping.
Yep, do what you got to do. Now we're going to do what we can to get the elbows up as high as possible and create as much rack on the torso as we can.
Have my hands even closer.
Yeah, feel free. Great. So we're here. We're trying to make this where the bar rests, so bring the chest up to the bar, a lot more stable there. And same thing, jump stance, throw overhead.
Oh wow, that's different.
Find a rack, get the chest up to meet the bar, use the legs and just trust the throw. There you go. Good, and rest. Woo. So we've got our snatch and our clean and jerk. When I'm assessing this in the early stages, the main things I'm concerned about are, do you understand what using the legs and being able to reactively bounce or jump looks like? And what does your overhead range look like? Because these are the main tenets or principles. If you're able to create a lot of drive off the top of a snatch or clean, you can do some really gnarly things even if you don't squat the weight. It's the same with the overhead. If you have a really, really nice, strong overhead range, and that's not something you have to worry too much about, you can do some pretty disgusting things to get it up there, but you can make a lot of saves.
Got it.
So that's our assessment today.
Cool, good stuff.
Good
That
stuff,
was awesome,
dude.
man. Thank you, bro. It was awesome.
Easy.
Wow. So there you have it. That's what a physical exam looks like here at Small Biz Gym.
Oh,
You got your ass beat, boy.
nice and sweaty, man.
Nice. Sweet, so that's the assessment. Now, when people are done with the assessment at Small Goods, over the hour, I hope two things kind of happen. One, I know who you are physically and mentally, and two, you have a bit of hope for the future. I think that that's a really important element of understanding where we're going to go next. And I'm a very big believer in self-determination theory, which is the main way you create intrinsic motivation in a human individual. I once taught an international workshop to a lot of different coaches across the world. What people don't realize is if you don't give people a picture of who they could be and hope for the fact that could be real, they're not going to put effort into the future of who they're going to be. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, so how'd you find that first up?
First of all, that was really fun, very challenging, and also shows me how much I'm actually capable of even just in one session, because I've never done that movement before, and just by a bit of guidance from yourself, I was able to do that, which adds so much confidence to myself already. So yeah, it was awesome.
No, glad to hear, man, and I think that that's exactly it, hopefully everyone that leaves an assessment session at Small Goods feels more informed. And the way that we normally do things, so I can be transparent with all of you at home, is real simple. I tell you how we could help you and what options make most sense. And if that doesn't work, I would point you to another gym locally that I think would do a good job, and I would tell you roughly what to do should you go to your Revo and never decide to do any of the above. Now, with you, what I found, Bernie, is that a lot of the work's going to come from building your quads. We notice time and time again, we're rocking back into the heels, we don't want to be over the toes, and that's normally a sign that the quads and the knee bend is something that we could work on. If you want to be a more capable power lifter or stronger in that way, which is central to strength itself in my opinion, you're going to have to learn to stay over the middle of your foot more. You're going to have to develop the quads significantly over time. And we're not surprised by that because squatting normally comes from spending time in deep ranges of motion, soccer of which has none of that. So it's nothing surprising, and that's completely fine because that wasn't a problem you solved up until today. But significantly growing the quads will help your squat and help your deadlift quite a lot. In terms of benching, I really liked what I saw. I think that the movement pattern itself was clean. Beyond that, it's no different, making sure that you're growing muscle mass over time in a way that's respected to the body's limits and all of the above. is the main way that we're going to work on that, provided your technique stays consistent. With Olympic lifting, I think going back to building significant quad mass being one of our biggest factors there, we're going to have to get a lot more comfortable in overhead positions and deep squat range. So I think it's something that you could definitely enjoy and benefit a lot from. And I would suggest that to you even though you were challenged by it because of two things. One, being a father is no less challenging, and that's something we're preparing for. Being a businessman is also challenging, and that's something we're preparing for every day. But I think outside of that, there was a certain puzzle you had to solve, and I think that that's something you really appreciate. And I think that that's why I like having conversations before we jump into our assessment process at Small Goods, because if I know who you are, then I meet your needs as a person, not just as a body. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Are there any questions about that? Is there anything that like really popped out or surprised you?
I think it definitely surprised me the fact that I've never been taken through something like this before in terms of any sort of physical fitness endeavor. Even in soccer, where you just start running, start playing, and then it's just based off of how you perform with other people rather than the individual specific aspect on the technical skills to that detail. So it really makes me think a lot deeper, and also allows me to be even more present in each movement, which I absolutely love.
And I think that that's exactly it. My job is not to create barriers to entry in fitness, it's to try and take as many of those away. So my belief is that after an assessment session, and hope everyone can see this as well, it's very clear what you need to work on. You could go to Revo and you could work on those things. Do you have very concrete prescriptions? No, but that needs to be something that's overseen by a professional, in my opinion. That being said, you could go and start working on your quads tomorrow and you could keep more of your weight forward, and instantly your training would be significantly better than it's probably ever been. I think one other thing that would be really fun to play with, so that I can extend this analogy, is what position do you play in soccer? Did you play?
So I played forward, like up front as a striker.
Great, well this works perfectly because I played defense and goalie my entire career and I was pretty good at it back in the day too. Now, I think assessment is something that everybody on a football pitch or in sport does unknowingly. But as a goalkeeper, one of the things that I was very good at doing was picking the moment that a striker takes one dribble too big, too fast to knock them out. I used to be, surprise, surprise, an 80 kilo, high 70 kilo speed machine, and no one would close faster than me. So I was always making an assessment on the football pitch of, well, who is Bernie? What is Bernie's strength? And I think that the same should be true of many people within fitness, whether they know it or not, they're assessing. But to make that clear to their clients, I think is a responsibility we have to have. Because if you know what your strengths are, then you can play to them. And if you don't know what they are, then one, you maybe never get stronger, and two, maybe you're playing or trying to fix weaknesses when that's not necessary. Do you know what I mean?
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, what do you think your strength was as a striker back in the day? Like, where were you scoring goals from? How did it happen?
Yeah, I think definitely it wasn't the physical aspect. It was more up here, understanding the positioning, being able to read the defender before he's even made the move. So it was very much like a chess game up here, steps ahead before, because I wasn't the fastest or strongest. I was very technical and skillful in my passing and vision, but it was all up here for me.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. So if you're able to assess that and you're able to play to that, you score goals. But if you're spending time trying to be the bigger, faster person, then how much effort do you put into that? What's the tangible result? Where if I continue to refine my vision, then maybe that's actually what gets me to the next stage. I think that that's exactly the same for people within the strength community. Yes, patching weakness is an important part of this, but if we know where our strengths lie and why they are the way they are, then we can lean into them and get some good stuff out of that, you know? I think assessing you overall as someone who's come to me, if I was to say what your strengths are, I think you're very, very strong through the lower back and behind your body. Glutes are strong, back is strong, and that's indicative of someone who's done the sprinting and the jumping and the stuff over many years of soccer. You're also really great at creating power in very short bursts of time. So compared to the average person that walks in here that's 40 or 50 and sits in a chair, it's no surprise that you can get off the line much faster than someone like that. I think the weaknesses, probably no surprise to you either, it's a lot in the overhead. The upper body could be stronger, and you've played on your feet your entire life, so that's to be expected. But if you look at the overhead, I think that there's a lot of work we can do. And that doesn't need to be crazy or over the top, but it would be a very fun way to work on that Olympic lifting compared to what the average rehab would be when you go to a physio. And the irony is that I find that many people come to me after physios have failed them, and they end up with better outcomes and better results because we actually find a fun way that they want to be a part of to get stronger. So I hope that that's helpful. It's been really awesome.
Incredible. Yeah, thank you so much for everything. I've learned so much along the way just in that space of the assessment. So I'm really excited to see what the results I get over the next few months. So
I'm looking forward to it too, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Bella. Also, one more quick thing. How can people find you and your gym?
There are lots of different ways. We try to make it a little bit easier. Getting here, you're not going to be able to find us even if you try. You're going to have to contact me. If you look at Instagram, you've got @smallgoodsgym or @moveorbemoved. Joel@smallgoodsgym is my email as well, so they're really easy ways to reach me. Beyond that, our website, www.smallgoodsgym.com, is also fantastic.
Beautiful. Thanks, Bella.
Cheers. Appreciate it.